On a normal day, 50 to 60 supertankers slide through the Strait of Hormuz, carrying the energy that powers global trade. But in March 2026, the belt stopped. Traffic plummeted by 98%, leaving a void where cargo used to flow. This sudden silence was the direct result of a rapid military escalation. Following intense strikes in late February, the region tipped over the edge, with the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iran retaliated by weaponizing the strait. They deployed sea mines and launched drone strikes, selectively hunting and hitting commercial vessels linked to Western allies. A handful of targeted strikes in one specific patch of water managed to instantly sever the primary artery of the modern globalized economy. To understand how this paralyzes global trade, look at the choke point's physical shape. The gap separating Iran and Oman is just 21 kilometers wide. Through that tiny crack, the world forces 21 million barrels of crude oil every single day. Roughly 1/5 of the entire world's daily oil consumption relies entirely on this single, incredibly narrow exit route. When the strait is blocked, the most common question is why the global economy can't simply route the oil around it using pipelines. This chart shows exactly why that doesn't work. On the left are the 21 million barrels that normally move through Hormuz. On the right is the primary alternative, the Saudi East-West pipeline, capping out at just 5 to 6 million barrels a day. That leaves roughly 15 million barrels trapped inside the Persian Gulf every day, with no physical way to reach the open market. Global markets cannot ignore a mathematical deficit of that scale. Brent crude, the global benchmark for oil prices, immediately surged, blasting past $100 and threatening $150 a barrel. The International Energy Agency, an intergovernmental organization that coordinates global energy policies, proposed a record release of 400 million barrels from emergency reserves. But even at that scale, the intervention only covers about 10 to 15 days of the lost supply. There is no engineering trick or financial maneuver that can bypass the physical reality of the blockade. To see what this looks like on the ground, we have to look at India. India relies heavily on the Persian Gulf, importing around 85% of its crude oil and more than 80% of its liquefied petroleum gas, or LPG, through this exact route. Because India holds virtually no strategic reserves for LPG, a sudden blockade dries up cooking gas supplies in a matter of days. That triggers long queues at distribution agencies and a surging black market. The pain spreads quickly to heavy industry. Natural gas shortages force vital fertilizer and chemical plants to halt production, threatening the country's domestic agricultural output. The Indian government is forced into frantic diplomacy. External Affairs Minister S. Jai Shankar has had to engage in intense negotiations with Iran to secure safe transit for a handful of non-Western Indian-flagged ships. A localized naval standoff, thousands of miles away, directly and immediately empties the cooking gas cylinders in civilian homes. This shutdown doesn't stop with oil and gas. It paralyzes the massive container ships carrying everyday consumer goods. With the strait closed, major shipping firms are forced to reroute hundreds of commercial vessels, sending them thousands of miles out of their way around the southern tip of Africa. That detour adds up to 14 extra transit days per voyage and spikes global freight costs by roughly 50%. This creates a brutal accordion effect. Ships arrive off schedule, creating crushing congestion and up to 50-day backlogs at major international ports. Trapped exports of fertilizer from the Gulf threaten to slash global crop yields, which can spike food prices by 10 to 20% in a matter of months. The Hormuz choke point governs both global energy prices and the availability of the raw materials required for basic human survival. We tend to think of supply chain crises as modern phenomenons, but empires have been exploiting this exact geographic vulnerability for over 500 years. In 1515, Portuguese forces captured Hormuz Island, building heavy stone fortresses specifically to tax commerce and physically monopolize the global trade routes to India. During the Canker War in the 1980s, Iran previously mined the strait, severely damaging ships like the USS Samuel B. Roberts and forcing direct intervention by the U.S. Navy. Despite decades of investing in renewable energy and building strategic petroleum reserves, modern civilization is still entirely physically tethered to this one specific waterway. Until the world physically restructures its supply chains, whoever holds the power to close the Strait of Hormuz holds the power to break the global economy.